What goes up must come down. Welcome to the Brand Breakdown. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Courtney.
And this is where we're going to track the rise and fall of big brands, from companies to celebs to pop culture phenoms and everything in between. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back. Glad to have you with us. This week we're going to be talking about Kate and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and what she's doing now and why never complain, never explain when you're talking about a royal brand can sometimes shoot you in the foot, as we've seen evidence of in the last few weeks. So, Courtney, I want you to kind of go over with us why the royal family has, used sort of the tagline, if you will, never complain, never explain, for everything they do in their royal life, and how it's kind of backfired for them recently, and Photogate and all that kind of stuff. So let's kind of just chat about it from the beginning and kind of, do you know the origins of it? Never complain, never explain. Is that like hundreds of years, or just with Queen Elizabeth, or when did that kind of start?
Yeah, so it seems that this unofficial motto originated with Prime Minister Disraeli back in the 1800s. And the Queen Mother, so the late Queen's mother, the Queen Mum, she kind of really took this approach and held it near and dear to the family. When she was getting engaged to her husband, who at the time was the Duke of York, and was never necessarily intended to be king, she gave an interview to the press, which now we're very familiar with engagement interviews with the royal family, but that was kind of unheard of at the time. And she gave an engagement interview, and nobody really had anything bad to say about it, but I believe the Duke of York was not pleased because the royals had this kind of air of mystery and mystique around them, and it was the feeling of, you've let too much in. Now that you've given them a little bit, they're gonna want more. And so the Queen Mum never again gave an interview for the rest of her life, and she lived to be 102 years old. And she really kind of drilled never complain, never explain into the rest of her lineage, really. So basically what that means for the royals is that they're going to be criticized. They live a pretty public life. People are always going to have something to say, and the best path forward is to absolutely say nothing at all. Don't explain yourself. Don't try to talk your way out of a situation. Don't try to set the record straight. But also recognize that you're very lucky and you have a lot of privilege. And if you complain about literally anything, you're going to look ungrateful and out of touch and ridiculous. So really the best line forward for the royals is to just keep your mouth shut and keep moving forward. And that's been working for a bit, kind of, but it's seeming to fall apart now.
Yeah, so famously, we know a couple that took never complain, never explain, and threw that shit right out the window. Mm-hmm. So we have talked about them, in multiple episodes, how they have complained and explained and complained and explained to death, and have really injured their brand in that way. So, but conversely, Catherine, who seems to be the ultimate stoic, hasn't ever complained or explained anything until, I think, this week. Am I correct?
Yeah, pretty much. Kate is one of the royals who, for as long as she's been in the public eye, we literally do not hear from her. Like, we see lots of pictures of her, we see her out and about, but her literal voice is kind of a mystery. She doesn't do a ton of speeches because she doesn't love public speaking and she's not very comfortable with it. And when she first got married and she would do a public speech, you could tell she was very nervous and people kind of gave her a hard time about it a little. She wasn't terrible at public speaking. It was just people who like to complain would say, you're the future queen, you should be taking public speaking classes and this should be easy for you, and why are you so nervous, blah, 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 blah. But Kate doesn't really ever comment when there's rumors. There have been rumors that her husband was cheating on her, and she has just kept her mouth shut, kept her head up, kept moving forward. when there were topless photos of her taken when she was on a private vacation, and some paparazzi with a long lens camera took a photo of her and published it in a magazine. She didn't react. William did. William looked like he was going to beat up every single person who was within a 3-mile radius of him. But Kate just...
Well, he famously has a bad temper.
Yeah. William has they call it the Windsor temper. William has a temper, and Kate just, she was like, okay, that happened, and we'll deal with it privately, and we're just going to move on, and I'm not going to make a statement about it. And they made a statement through their lawyers that I think most people agree was William's statement. It was not Kate's. It was William's. But she just pretty much she's also been a big fan of the never complain, never explain. Just keep your head down, keep your mouth shut, keep moving forward. And I think part of it is because she knows if she complains, she's going to look terrible, right? She doesn't... If she complains like, oh, the press intrusion, oh, like, this is so hard, that's so hard, she knows that somebody will always be able to come back and say, you live an incredible life. The press intrusion, yes, that stinks, but you live in a castle and you have all of these staff and this hired help, and if in exchange for that you've got to get your picture taken sometimes, it's probably a pretty fair trade-off. And I think also the royals really try to be mindful of the fact that the taxpayers do foot the bill for some of their lifestyle, particularly their security. And so to complain about anything that goes with the lifestyle that is being paid for by the public is just, there's no way you come off looking good. Like, you just look ungrateful. And then, as we've seen with other folks, when they do try to constantly correct the narrative, they're just digging themselves a further hole, because then it opens up, you know, oh, they corrected this part of the story, but not that part of the story. So does that mean that this part's true and that part's not true? And, you know, if they said, you know, famously Meghan had gotten upset because there was talk that she had gotten a copper, I think it was a copper tub or something like that. And they released a statement saying they did not have a copper tub. So then people would start joking like, oh, it must be gold. You know,
oh, right. They couldn't win.
Yeah, like the story just got more ridiculous, rather than if you had just not said anything, let it go. People would give, and you know, I think the royals also never complain, never explain plays into the fact that prior to social media, perhaps, there was a shorter news cycle. You know, something might get published in the newspaper, but the next day there's something new to talk about. So you can just wait out the storm a little bit. Now we've got this 24-hour news cycle. We've got social media. Stories stay bigger for longer. They get bigger as the day goes on if they are not immediately quashed and rectified somehow. But we've seen both ends of the spectrum here with royals trying to correct the narrative all the time, and then trying to just, you know, never complain, never explain, and move through it. And neither of those really seem to work. It almost seems like the royals are kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't at this point, because no matter what approach they take, there's always a problem with it. And that's a really tricky place to be.
Yeah, so interestingly to me, when Omid Scobie came out with his book a few months ago, where he accused Catherine and the King of racism against Meghan, the King and Catherine did not say anything. Mm-hmm. But here we are, I don't know, 4 or 5 months later, 6 months later, I don't even remember, and she took the photograph of herself and the kids for Mother's Day, and then came out with a statement apologizing for the photo, which that was an explain. That was a, you know, mea culpa in a big way, and she's never done that before. So
yeah,
I just feel like that there is such a frenzy now because of her prolonged absence for recovery from surgery that whoever is advising her said, you got to say something, right? So her team, as we've talked about, may need a little facelift.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. So if we go back to everything that happened with the Sussexes, the most interesting statement to come out from the palace after the Oprah interview was, very famously, recollections may vary. And that was a kind of big deal that the Queen, the late Queen, had released a statement, because that was a little bit of a complain and explain. You know what I mean? She was putting her foot down and saying this didn't happen. And, she wasn't just going to let it go. And I think that the Sussexes, for their part, a lot of their offensive was that they knew that the royals would let a lot go. They knew that they could get away with saying a lot, and that the royals' MO of never complain, never explain meant that they were not going to come out and publicly correct them. However, the Queen released the statement that said recollections may vary. It has later come out that that statement, that line, recollections may vary, was Kate. Kate is the one who said, we have to stand firm. We have to say something that lets people know that we don't take what they're saying. Like, we're not admitting any truth to this. We're not going to, get into a public pissing match over it. But we have to say something that tells people that this is not true. And apparently it was Kate who kind of insisted that that line be used, and it made it into the final statement. And, the Queen signed her name to recollections may vary. So that's one instance of Kate kind of, putting her neck out there a little bit, although at the time we didn't know it was her. I think with what's going on right now, like you said, the frenzy has just become so absurd. And I think that through all of this, and I think also the royals are in a very weird and unique position right now, where if Kate had had her surgery and, everything else in the family stayed the same. The king was doing well. The Queen was out and about. William was able to get back to work right away. I think that Kate's absence wouldn't be as noticeable. But because Kate and the king went out at the same time, and it just puts this glaring hole in the royal family, I think that the frenzy has, it's made a lot more people question the stability of the monarchy and all of that. They're not just saying, oh, no, this poor woman's sick. They're saying, oh, no, what happens when, right now the current monarch is ill and the future queen is ill? What happens? Where do we go from here? And so I think that, according to reports that I've read, William and Kate have been very frustrated this entire time because from their perspective, and like you and I have discussed, they've been very clear the whole time. She had a surgery. It went well. Don't expect to see her until sometime after Easter, unless we give you another update about something significant happening. Just know that she's recovering and she's going to be taking some time off of work. So William and Kate are reportedly incredibly frustrated because all they want is privacy. They just want to be able to focus on Kate getting better. They want to be able to focus on the kids, just being normal kids, adjusting to, maybe their mom has needed help around the house. Maybe she hasn't been able to be as present as she usually is. That's a big adjustment for kids, especially Louis. He's only 5. So that type of thing can be really tricky for kids to understand, what's wrong with my mom? Why is she sick? Where is she? Why can't she play with me? Why can't she come to my school events? And so they just wanted to be able to focus on Kate's recovery and their family, and they haven't been able to do that because it's been this ridiculous media storm of where is she? What's wrong? Why aren't they telling us the truth? They're obviously hiding something. And so I think Kate and William felt a bit pressured to release the Mother's Day photo because of the paparazzi photo that had come out a couple days before with Kate in the car and people saying oh, that's a body double. It doesn't even look like her. Where is she going? Why isn't William with her? Obviously, if he's not with her, that means they must be getting a divorce and all of this ridiculous stuff. And so we know that they took the photo on Friday afternoon. Kate edited it twice, once on Friday evening, once again on Saturday morning. And then the press kept asking their office, hey, will they be releasing a photo this year? Is there a photo coming? And Kensington Palace office wasn't telling the press anything. And then 30 minutes before the photo was released on social media, the palace office said, or somebody notified the reporters and said, there's going to be a photo coming in 30 minutes. One of the reporters said that Kate sent the email. So I don't know if that meant that Kate literally emailed the royal reporters and was like, hey guys, I'm sending a photo, or if they just meant Kate sent it to her team and was like, release this photo. But whatever the case may be, it was a very quick turnaround, and it was definitely something that I think William and Kate felt pressured to do, because I think they were just like, fine, let's just give them a picture, show them you're fine, get everybody off our back so we can get to the next few weeks of your recovery, and then like, move on. And also, I think the thing with Trooping the Color, where the Ministry of Defense announced that she would be there, and then Kensington Palace was like, you can't confirm her attendance unless we confirm her attendance, and we're not confirming her attendance, so take it down. And that got everybody all worked up, because people were like, well, that's not until June, so why won't you confirm her attendance? Is she not doing well? Is she sicker than we thought? Like, the palace's MO of don't tell them anything has just created this vacuum of space for people to make up whatever they want and read into the absence of information. And I think William and Kate were like, forget it. Let's just give them a picture and shut everybody up. And then
it exploded.
And then that was like the worst thing they could have done, apparently, because heaven forbid somebody edit their own social media photo. And now CNN announced that they're going to be reviewing every single photo that's been taken by Kate and submitted to the press over the last 11 or 12 years.
That's
like, isn't that crazy?
Stupidest thing I've ever heard. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Everyone photoshops their stupid frickin' photos. Like, I've been in advertising my entire career, and every photo or design or anything that's ever gone out to anywhere has been edited.
Yeah, like, especially on your own social media. Like, and especially if you had to, like, imagine if you were sick, like, not even severely sick, just like you weren't feeling that great, and someone took a picture. Like, you know, you go out with your friends and someone's like, oh, let's take a picture, and everyone's like, oh, I look so cute in that. You're like, I don't look great. Can I just like touch it up real quick before you post it on your social? Because, like, you just want to look good. You want to put your best foot forward. And Kate knows that, like, it's not just her friends and family who are going to see this photo. It's everyone in the entire freaking world is going to see this photo. So, yeah, let's make sure Charlotte's dress is, like, her skirt is straight and everybody's hair looks good and, you know, there's not a weird wrinkle in a shirt or something like that. Like, it's not a big deal. But I think that the never complain, never explain has just created this situation where there's such a lack of information that people can say whatever they want. And because nobody's ever coming out to be like, that's not true, people just assume the silence is almost an acknowledgement of it being true. And then when somebody finally does say something, people are like, oh, well, we don't believe you because obviously you're just covering something up. And it's like, well, what are they supposed to do? If they don't say anything, then you think they're hiding something. If they do say something, you think they're lying. What do you do in that situation?
Well, I think that people have glommed on to this opportunity to vilify Kate, and because she's never really put a foot out of line, and so they're taking any kind of excuse they can to just drag her down. I think it's absolute crap. I think that, you know, saying it's honestly the dumbest thing I've ever heard, to say that we're going to go back and examine 11 years of photos. What do you expect to find? Like, what's going to be the purpose of that? What's the outcome? You're paying someone $30, $40 an hour to go back and look at 11 years of pictures. To what end? Like, what's going to be the outcome? It just makes you look like an a-hole. Like, I think it's reprehensible.
The only thing that I can see positively coming out about CNN spending all this time and money to review every single photo is that if they come out and they say, okay, she's edited every photo ever, then it's like, okay, so this isn't weird. The fact that she edited this photo is not a weird thing. You know what I mean? Like, we've let it slide for 11 years and we never had any idea it was happening. Let's just let it go. However, if CNN comes back and is like, she's never edited any photo, this is the first one, then we go back to people being like, oh my God, she wasn't really in the picture. They photoshopped her body in. What was going on? Like, but I honestly think CNN's going to come back and say, oh yeah, she's photoshopped every picture. This is like, this is just par for the course. Well,
who cares? There's no story here, folks. There's no story. Like, who cares? Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. The whole thing is just absurd. And I think when we look at the brand of the royal family, who has for so long managed to thrive on the concept of never complain, never explain, I think that, you know, what worked in the late 1800s, what worked in all of the 1900s.
It was the early 1800s.
The late I think he was like mid-ish. I think he was like 1860s.
Yeah. I think he died
So like
in 78 or something like that.
yeah, so like mid 1800s through the entire 1900s and even the early 2000s. But I think now that we're in a time when there is social media, everybody gets to have an opinion. Everyone can have a podcast. Like
It's true. Even a couple of amateurs like ourselves.
even a couple of amateurs with no recording or editing experience, might I add. And we do edit every single one of these, just in case anyone's curious.
We also Photoshop ourselves on the regular.
Sure do.
Yep.
Yeah, I just think that the palace, from a PR perspective, from the standpoint of what is this doing to, you know, Kate's brand in particular, because she's somebody who, up until a couple of weeks ago, nobody ever really had a bad thing to say about her, except like, oh, I wish she would work more. But even then, it wasn't going to be the downfall of the monarchy, right? Like, it wasn't craziness. And I think that the royals really need to take a look at the way they handle these situations moving forward, because never complain, never explain, and this complete freeze out isn't working in a time where everybody has an opinion and everybody has a platform to voice it. So
It's true. Just look at us.
But I mean, I don't know what that means though. Like, I don't want to see them come out and start refuting every single rumor that comes out. That's insane too. But, you know, I think they could have done with Kate had a surgery. She's doing well. She's going to get back to work at Easter. And then maybe we got an update 2 weeks later. The Princess of Wales wants everyone to know she thanks them for their well wishes. She's still doing well. You know, she was released from the hospital. Here's a picture of her resting at home. Even if it's not really a picture of her, but maybe it's like, you know, her profile, she's sitting on a chair and the kids are in the room or something. You know what I mean? Like, they could have given more than they did without actually giving anything away. And they didn't even try. Not that I don't know. It's a sticky wicket, isn't it? Like, have anybody Yeah, because, like, I don't think they owe us anything. I don't think that if Kate said, you know, I had surgery and I'm recovering and I want my privacy, good. You get it. You don't owe me any explanation until you want to, if you ever want to. I just hope you're doing well. So, like, I don't actually subscribe to the idea that they need to do more. However, just looking at the grand scheme of things and what's happening to the brand of Kate and also the brand of the royals as a whole, I think that there's got to be some change because it's not working. What they're doing right now is no longer working.
Well, and it really all started back with Meghan and Harry 4 years ago when they started shooting holes in the royal brand and their own brand. And they took, you know, the motto of never complain, never explain, and tossed it not just out the window, but like over a cliff. And I think it's been slowly disintegrating since then, honestly. Like, if you look at all the books that have come out and all the articles and all the interviews and everything. So I agree with you. Like, they've got to figure out a way to run the middle ground with a team that can help them navigate that better. You know, I don't know who their team is, and maybe they're fantastic and they've been told they have to do it this way. But if I were running their team, I would say, like, hey, we need to do something to assuage the fears of the public while also continuing to give you your privacy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think part of it is, you know, we hear a lot about Harry's hatred of the press. And, you know, he hates the press. He hates them for what they did to his mother. People seem to forget that Diana had 2 sons. And William hates the press just as much, if not even more, than Harry does. William, however, has always been a little bit better at playing ball than Harry, because he has, you know, Harry wears his heart on his sleeve. William has a temper, but he can kind of, like, temper his temper.
He's stoic. Harry has more stoic.
Yeah, he's more stoic. He's more reserved. Harry's never really had that ability. So where Harry was willing to, like, just come out swinging, or, you know, come out of a nightclub and punch a photographer in the face and try to steal their camera, William was able to be like, okay, whatever, I'm just going to put my head down and get in the car. And Harry always wanted to fight the press, and William has always been a little bit more willing to not necessarily let it roll off his back, but just ignore it. And I think that people kind of forget that William hates the press just as much as Harry does. And so this response of Kate needing privacy and Kate needing to recover and protecting the kids from what they may hear in the media as they try to adjust to their mom not doing, or I mean, I think she's doing okay right now, but at the time, she was very sick. I think that William's response to that was to really go into like complete and total lockdown and say like, there is no grace period for the media. They do not get an inch. We don't give them anything because like we are going to get our privacy. And that's partially because he hates them just as much as Harry does. And he wasn't willing to compromise on this when he has been willing to compromise in other areas, like he's been willing to, like Kate did the photo calls at the hospital after every kid. They've provided pictures of each kid on their birthday. They take the Mother's Day photos and the Father's Day photos and the family Christmas card photos. They do all of that. And that's William being like, okay, we'll give them a little bit. We'll do our part. We know that we owe the public their pound of flesh. So here's a picture of our kid. We'll take the kids to the Christmas Carol service that Kate does at Westminster. We'll let the kids walk to Christmas service at Sandringham and get the pictures then. So William bends a little bit in ways that I don't think he would necessarily want to, but he knows he kind of has to. And I think in this situation with Kate being sick, he drew a line in the sand. And every time the press came at them for a comment or an update, and every time social media started to get out of hand, I think William dug his heels in even further. And so his team, they are all seasoned professionals. They don't just hire like any Joe Schmo off the street. They hire people who have worked for prime ministers and presidents and like the most tippity-toppitiest PR people you could find. And I think that they're probably getting good advice and probably ignoring it. Because I'm sure at some point their communications people were like, hey, we have to say something. And I think that's where we ended up with Kate's statement. Because I think Kate was like, you know what, fine. I edited the stupid photo. It's not a big deal. Let's just tell them, like, I'll just write a message really quick saying, hi guys, yep, we took a photo. I edited it. I hope you had a good Mother's Day. And let that be the end of it. Of course it's not, because now people are saying I've seen people saying, she didn't really write it. I've seen people say that all of this is like she's being the scapegoat for somebody else who should have really gotten in trouble, and they're throwing her under the bus, and why would she apologize when somebody else is the one who messed up? And it's like, well, maybe because she didn't mess up, nobody messed up, this is such a non-issue, and she's just trying to like, I think Kate's finally at the point where she's like, okay, forget never complain, never explain. Let's see what a statement does. Let's see if it helps, because quiet didn't work. Let's see if, hey, you guys are right. Sorry about that. Let's see if that works. The answer appears to be no.
And then the next day, and then the next day we see them on the way to London, which we haven't seen at all either. So we know they're trying to make her more visible now.
That was a really interesting thing. So there was an interview with the two photographers who actually got that shot. And they said they were only, they had no idea Kate was going to be there. They were only expecting to get a shot of William. So they were just camped out along, literally like, they know that to get from Windsor to London, they have to take this road. And so they were just like camped out on the route, basically, being like, oh, maybe we'll get a shot of William. And they said they didn't even know that they got a shot of Kate until they were looking back at the photos after. And they were like, oh my God, she's there. Like, they had no idea she was even there. It was not necessarily, it was not a planned shot by any means. And the fact that if those two guys hadn't gotten that photo, nobody would have. So nobody would have even known she was in London that day, which, leads me to wonder how many times has she been to London throughout all of this. But I think the fact that the palace let the photo run, because again, we don't usually get paparazzi photos of the royals. So the fact that they let it run, I think, was them being like, yep, fine. Show them in the car together. Maybe this'll help.
Yeah. I kind of feel sorry for them, honestly. It's so unfair, you know. You and I get sick and we get to go crawl in the bed and turn off the lights and turn off our phones and tell everybody to, F off. But they don't get to do that. Now I realize that they live a life of privilege that you and I cannot possibly imagine. I didn't even know they made copper tubs, to be honest with you. So, so I definitely know that, they live a different kind of life, and so no one's interested in what we're doing when we're sick. But I do feel sorry for them, and I do think they're going to have to rework their motto of never complain, never explain, except for sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think they just got to find the middle ground of, don't engage with every single piece of gossip and speculation, but you can't really go radio silent for 3 months and expect everybody to be cool with that. Like I think that they're going to realize like there's got to be some happy medium here, and what that is, I don't know.
Well, I think over the next few months, there's going to have to be some image repair for her, even though, in my opinion, she hasn't done anything that deserves image repair. But because of the perception of things, I think once she's back in the public eye, I think we're going to see her a lot. I do. I know we talked about this in our bonus episode, but I do think that she is going to be out there, making sure people see her and understand she still is gracious and lovely and alive and not an alien as she was before. So it'll be interesting to see, and I really am curious to see what they do with Never Complain, Never Explain over the next couple of years, having had it, completely blown to bits multiple times over the last few years, and then in the last few months, the way it's kind of come apart. It'll be interesting to see how they pursue that going forward.
Yeah.
Well,
Interesting.
thank you so much. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for kind of giving me a little more perspective on how that came about and how we think it's going to go moving forward. I'll be really interested to see. I think this kind of wraps up everything that we have on Kate this week. And we're going to start a new series on a different royal coming up, and we're going to keep it a surprise, but we will have our weekly wrap up on Friday of all the royal news this week.